Thanks everyone for joining the first Adaptive Cards call, taking some time out of the busy world out there to join us and talk a little bit about Adaptive Cards. I'm Matt Heidinger. This is the second year of every month we've been doing these ever since Dana asked us to start January of 2019 or something. So thanks for jumping on. Today we've got a couple more guest speakers. Last month we had a pretty big deep dive into Flutter and Adaptive Cards. And this month, we've got Mick and Joe Harris from AtBot, who have been longtime supporters and integrators of Adaptive Cards. Originally, when I first met them, they were doing some amazing stuff, making bot development accessible to low-code developers. And they've done some even deeper integrations and innovations that they're going to walk through today. So with that, we're going to jump right in. And the first thing I wanted to mention as just kind of a call to action if anyone is interested. So we have an upcoming partner onboarding meeting on February 9th. So in just under a month. And we're looking for folks who are building or interested in building adaptive cards that work with Teams and Outlook. So we've sort of demoed some things along the way. We've called it this universal action model to make it easier to write cards that you can communicate with the backend the same way. With Outlook and Teams, we have two different ways that you communicate with the backend. So we've spent a long year of progress getting alignment on that. And we're hoping to demo it, deep dive into it, and then onboard some folks who would be interested. So if you are interested in that, please email me and Dana, I don't know if you're able to quickly put my mail or something. But just reach out at matt.heidinger@microsoft.com. We'll do our best to accommodate. We may do more of these. There's also the Microsoft Ignite March, spring, whatever we're calling it, conference was announced. So there'll be plenty more of opportunities to engage with us, but this is finally coming to fruition, just making it much more streamlined to build cards with Teams and Outlook with a consistent backend. And I did see a quick question in the chat about what the program is.
Can you explain the program a little bit in more detail?
Yeah, it's not even really a program. It's like a meeting that it was originally kind of like a focus group we were going to do and to learn how people were currently working on stuff. But then we kind of shifted it to, let's just do a deep dive, give people an update on how our unified approach for building cards that show up in Teams and Outlook and communicate with a consistent backend. So quick details. When you build a card in Outlook, we have an action type called action.http that lets you make an arbitrary HTTP request to your backend that you can format a certain way. And if you write a bot for Microsoft Teams, you use action.submit, and that has a different way of communicating with the backend. So it's a little tricky right now, a little cumbersome if you are building adaptive cards for both Teams and Outlook. So what we've been working on is a new unified model. We call it the universal action model to deliver cards in Outlook once they've been delivered and then handle the actions. So this is going to be a very informal meeting. It's not like a full event. It's going to be a 1-hour thing where we do a deep dive into that. And again, this is kind of the first one. Expect more of this topic on the community call. Expect more of this topic at future Microsoft events. But we just finally are at a place where we can start engaging with partners, and it'll be in a functioning place so that we can review the docs and basically get early feedback on this before we kind of widen the net out. So I can also explain all that in email. This isn't you signing up for anything. So if you are interested at all, just drop me an email. I can give you more details and provide whatever information you need on that.
Perfect.
Cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, I like the informality of this. That I messaged Dana like minutes ago. I was like, "Hey, heads up! I added a slide. I want to talk to some people from our community." So cool. With that, thank you for your engagement in that. And let me hand it over to Mick and Joe from AtBot, and they're going to show us some pretty cool stuff. So why don't you guys take it away?
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Joe Harris. Mick Harris is also on the line. We are brothers. We founded H3 Solutions, how many years ago? 15, 16 years ago, 2006, 15. 15 years ago. And AtBot is our latest product. It's a software as a service for no-code, low-code bot building built on the Microsoft Cloud. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through a quick level set of what AtBot is and how we integrate with adaptive cards and the adaptive card designer. And then I'm going to be showing something that's brand new that we're supporting in Teams, which is called Teams Calling, and how we integrate adaptive cards there. And then Mick, I'm going to hand it over to Mick to dive into some code as to how we actually do that using the adaptive card libraries for C#. So to start off, what is AtBot? I know everybody on the call is asking themselves this because you've never heard of it before. So AtBot is what we call a bot as a service, or it's a software as a service platform for the Microsoft Cloud for building bots. It allows you to build and release bots in a matter of hours. It's very, very simple. We have a built-in card designer. The card designer is something that you're probably very familiar with. It's the card designer that Matt and his team built. We have deep integration with LUIS, which is the language understanding intelligence service from Microsoft. So that's the natural language understanding. And we have a layer that goes on top of that that allows your LUIS apps to integrate very tightly with your bots. We have native integration with Q&A Maker, which is the Microsoft cognitive service for questions and answers. It's basically like an Excel spreadsheet with questions and answers on it that you're able to integrate with your bot. And your data integration and skills, what we call them in AtBot, are actually built in Power Automate or Logic apps. So, and all of this can be built without code. So you can build your bots, design your adaptive cards and everything, and tie it all together without having to write a single line of code, unless you want to get fancy. So the extensibility story for AtBot is the exact same extensibility story for Power Automate or Logic apps. Just build an Azure function if you need to connect to a data source that doesn't exist in either of those RPAs, and then connect it to your bot via your Flow or your Logic app. So a quick rundown. If the previous slide didn't make sense, hopefully this one makes a little bit more sense to you. The architecture. So AtBot sits between just behind the bot framework. So your bots in AtBot are in fact, bot channel registrations within the bot framework. We are just the endpoint that you use. So when you have a channel like Teams, Direct Line, the web, Alexa, or SMS, those are still going through bot framework. They're coming into the AtBot platform. We integrate with LUIS to understand intents, and then we kick it down to either Power Automate, Logic apps, or Q&A Maker to do something with the intent from the user. So with that, I'm going to get into a demo. And one thing to note is you can go to appbot.io. If you have an Office 365 subscription and an Azure subscription, you log in using OAuth, and you can try AppBot for free. So this quick demo, it's mostly focused around adaptive cards and how we integrate with adaptive cards. If you're interested in everything else that we do, feel free to reach out to hello@appbot.io, and we can set something more up. So this is my bot. This is my Ask IT Services bot, which is integrated with ServiceNow. And I'm going to go ahead and ask this bot for a software installation that I need to have done. So I need Visio installed on my laptop. So this shows our integration with LUIS to understand the intent. They want to have software installed. It's also pulling out the entity of Visio to know that that is a piece of software. That is the piece of software that they want installed. And then you can see here, this is the adaptive card that gets sent down to the user. So this was built using the adaptive card designer. I'll get into the back end and show that in just a second after I show the demo. So I'll go ahead and fill out this, this quick card. Submit it. And this is going to take that information and create a ticket in ServiceNow. I could click that button to get the status of my ticket, but what I'll do is I'll use natural language again. Ask it what the status of my ticket is. This is a really cool feature of LUIS, the regular expression entity recognition. So we're using that to recognize ticket numbers when people ask about the status. And so it recognizes that I want to get the status of a ticket, and it knows what the ticket number is, and goes to ServiceNow, finds it, and then renders another adaptive card here. And I could click this to go to the self-service portal. So on the back end, the way these cards are designed is in our Appbot admin portal. So this is the portal that you gain access to once you sign up for Appbot. It's where you can build your bots, register them with Bot Framework. Well, actually, you register them in Azure, and then you take the keys and bits and pieces and put them over here into this portal. But what we're going to focus on, again, is our adaptive card integration. So we have what we call adaptive card templates, and we have two types. We have the display type template, which is kind of like a fire and forget. If you want your bot to send a display template or a display card to the user, this is the type of card you would use. And then we have the form type card, which is any type of card where you want the bot to send the user a form that has any sort of fields or drop downs or whatever, and wait for them to respond to that card. So this here is the software request that you saw. And we can go ahead and open up the card editor. This is the adaptive card designer embedded from NPM. Is that right? NPM? I think so. And so the way we do our dynamic data, the way we allow you to integrate these with your bot is any field, including display fields, but in this case, this is a form type of adaptive card. Any field that you want available to collect data in, you just have to give it an ID. So you can see here we've given this field this ID, these radio buttons this ID, and this field this ID. And then you can see on this screen what fields are what we call dynamic properties from an Appbot standpoint. And then again, this is where you kind of build those building blocks. So the adaptive card building blocks for your bot. And then down here, you can see we have our Lewis portions of it. So you build your Lewis app, and then you connect your Lewis app in here under AI integrations. You build your adaptive card templates, and then it all gets tied together in either Power Automate or Logic Apps. So this flow, if we dive into it, we'll see that it starts with a trigger that is a Lewis intent, which is install software. This connector, this is the AtBot connector in either Power Automate or Logic Apps. It's a standard connector in Power Automate. Logic Apps doesn't matter whether you have standard or not. And we have a number of conversational actions within this connector. So this here is just a send reply. This is a courtesy reply to the user to let them know that, I got your request, just a second. This here is a get adaptive card response from user. So this is how we send the card to the user and wait for the response. So you can see here in this dropdown, this is where all the adaptive card form cards are listed for you to get. And then so on and so forth, and we create the record in ServiceNow, et cetera. So that's kind of the very, very quick what AtBot is, how we work with adaptive cards, and how you can quickly build a skill that includes adaptive cards without any code. So what I'm going to show next is we have a brand new feature in AtBot. If I take a quick look here, I'm going to open one that doesn't, this guy here. We have this Teams call settings. So Teams it's in preview right now. You have to be using the developer version of the Teams client to use this. But you can create bots that you can talk to. You can call them and talk to them. And in here, you can see if we enable this, there's a whole bunch of settings. You have to have an Azure speech service. You get to choose the voice you want to use. There's a wake word and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, what we're doing is we're allowing you to build bots without any code that you can call and talk to in Teams. Now, what's really exciting about this is where we're integrating adaptive cards for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a video, and I'm going to make sure I'm sharing my audio. The reason I have to use a video is because this is a Teams call, and I can't have two Teams calls going on at the same time. Okay. What this video is, this demo, is Mick is on a conference call with two other people, and he's going to add a bot to the conference call that they can use a wake word to talk to that bot, and the bot will be able to do some actions while they're on the call together.
This is a demonstration of a bot joining a Teams call and using adaptive cards to share its screen. First, we'll call the bot.
Hey, this is Larry.
Now let's have Larry bring up a screen. Okay, Larry. Let's take a look at upcoming bookings.
Sure thing. There are 3 upcoming bookings for the week of January 11th.
So what you're seeing there, what just happened, is okay Larry is a wake word that you were able to create and put into the bot. And then let's take a look at upcoming bookings was a Lewis intent that kicked off a skill. And then in the flow in Power Automate, this is an adaptive card. So in the adaptive card, you're able to select that this is to be shared as a screen share by the bot, rather than just posting it into the chat channel.
All right, let's get some more info on that first one, I think. We'll ask the bot to go get more information and show us more details. Okay, Larry. Let's take a look at the first one.
Sure, looking up the first booking. Here are the booking details. This is a shipment by sea departing on January 12th. It has the following freight: automobiles, steel, textiles, and appliances. The departure date is currently unconfirmed.
So now Joni and Alan and I would discuss and make sure that departure date makes sense. Then we'd let the bot know, and Larry would update the system. Okay, Larry. This departure date is confirmed.
Great, I'll confirm the departure date. The departure date of January 12th has been confirmed.
So this demo was put together in about an hour and a half because we didn't have a whole lot of time to put it together, and the cards they leave a little bit something to be desired from a design standpoint. But I think the idea comes across here, right? All this data could be coming from backend data sources. It could be whatever. It's just it's a flow or a logic app that you're able to talk to, and the bot will display it on screen. So I'm going to go ahead and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop for just a second here for any questions before we dive into how we use the adaptive card libraries to accomplish something like this. If you have questions, go ahead and post them in chat, or feel free to unmute yourself.
Or do the hand up or whatever. Yeah, whatever works. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. Quick question I had is, so is the intention here that, or from the scenarios you're trying to enable, that the cards that I have already created would be reused for this? Like, do you see these scenarios as like a new modality to existing chat-based flows, or do you anticipate that kind of these voice-enabled bots are targeting different scenarios and they would be built specifically for voice?
I believe that they are more purpose-built for voice, but I'll let Mick elaborate on his ideas.
So I think first and foremost, they are, when you build these, they are built the same way as if you were going to use them for chat or voice. So this same skill could be used in a chat window. It could be a group chat with the same folks, or it could be a one-on-one with a bot, those kind of things. So the skill itself, there isn't anything you're doing to it that makes it voice only, video only like this. It'll work in either one. Honestly, the only difference would be the scheme, the color scheme, right? So the white background, if I'm on the dark theme right now in Teams, I have to play with that a little bit more, whereas I'm basically committed to quote dark theme in voice because there is no other background. It's always going to be black on the sides like that.
Gotcha.
So it's just little nuances like that. But for the most part, the intent was really you could do it either way. But we do kind of see this as, a potential different way you could utilize a bot in a meeting and use these cards as a way to share information. You'll note when the status went from pending to confirmed, What's really happening there from a Power Automate Logic Apps perspective is a different card is being sent and shown. And because it's screen sharing, only one card shows at a time. So what it effectively does is it replaces the previous card. A logic app could be built for a meeting that's just constantly checking information and constantly updating whatever card is being shown. So depending on, what comes to mind is operations type scenarios. Maybe you're on a bridge for an outage or an issue, or maybe there's just something going on that you just have to constantly collaborate with, and it's just a meeting that folks can join and leave as they see fit, depending on the business case. A bot could be an automated way to just keep the latest and greatest type of information on the screen for that purpose. So yeah. I think it could be either way. You could use it for multiple purposes. It's a very different experience because in chat, every new card is a new message, right? So it's a vertical scroll of the cards, whereas this is the same card just being replaced.
Yeah, neat. Okay, cool.
And I think what's really great for us in this type of implementation, for the reason we did it is because we can, right? So Teams opened up some APIs that allow bots to share a screen. We're a no-code bot platform. How can we take advantage of that? What can we do to provide value there? And we already have the pretty deep integration with adaptive cards. It just made sense, right? To use that as what the bot can do to share its screen, because really, a bot sharing its screen means I want the bot to show me data, and adaptive cards are a really great way to do that. So that's kind of how we came to this conclusion.
Awesome.
Cool. So it looks like we don't have any questions. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mick just to talk quickly about the implementation.
Great. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So this is a snippet of code I extracted from our core code that's around the creation, conversion of the adaptive card to an image. This comprises the use of the adaptive cards NuGet package for both the parsing of adaptive card JSON and then the rendering of that adaptive card object into an image. So these are the libraries I'm using. Again, it's just a single library that I believe it's a single library that comes with all of this, all three of these libraries that are being used. So a simple example message, very standard anytime you're working with adaptive cards processing in .NET, as you will be working with card JSON. And so this should be fairly self-explanatory. This is the JSON that represents the card itself. So coming into this method, some key things, I'm working with images when I'm rendering as an image using those built-in library calls we'll talk about in a second. So that's going to be a big part of this, is that's my true output. Render width is a key piece when rendering to an image. You don't actually specify height. You only specify width, and it just maintains the aspect ratio of the card itself. Some key pieces to just get started is you create this adaptive card object. I'm specifying the schema that I'm working against, and then you create an adaptive card object from the JSON, and I'm grabbing the card object. Now, what I'm not doing here, it's worth mentioning if folks are just getting into this process is a parse. It's parsing this JSON for you. It does also give you output or results as far as the quality of the syntax of the JSON. So if there's any warnings, actually if there's any errors, all those things, you're going to get that. So it's actually a tuple you get out of this. It's called a parse result object. It's really got two parts to it: the card itself plus any messages about any warnings, any issues with what was parsed, those kinds of things. Once I've got my card object, going forward, what I'm doing here is I'm going to render it as an image. I'm going to circle back after I talk about that and talk about what else I could do with this card object, because this is kind of a starting point. And we actually touched on it earlier, but we use this same technique in a very different way in the UI that Joe showed, where you're actually building the cards, that preview display we have there. So at that point, I'm starting to get into the rendering components of this. The first thing is I establish that I do not want interactivity when I render the card. Since I'm rendering it as an image, it's not going to have buttons. It can't. And so what I want it to do is basically not show buttons. If I had buttons on the card, if I was rendering this in Teams, I'd want the buttons to show. So this is one of those things where, because I know I'm rendering an image, I can take the buttons out. I create my renderer object. Again, this is inside of that renderer.wpf namespace. There is a renderer object. This uses the host config I established right here. And then I'm calling an async method to render the image. I send it the card object, not the JSON, but the card object. I'm running this from a server. Again, this is a snippet from our server code that runs as a microservice in a Service Fabric cluster in Azure. And I'm sending my card render width and, of course, the cancellation token since it's async. At this point, I get a result object that includes a stream to my image bits. So I grab that stream and I generate an image object. And again, this is that system drawing.2D image object. So base bitmap object of your 2D array of pixels for your image. From here, I can do lots of things with it. What we use it for at this point is when we're sharing our screen in Teams, that is a 15 frames per second video stream, and this is a frame. So we are doing this 15 times a second, and of course we're optimizing, so we're not necessarily doing the same thing more than we need to. But generally speaking, that's what I'm using it for at that point. So an example of how I could then manipulate that image if I wanted to is a stretch to fit technique. So again, this is now your standard system drawing 2D techniques of resizing the image to fit whatever aspect ratio you need. Now this could squish or squash or stretch your image depending on the original aspect ratio. So it really depends on how to meet the need that you have. But the point is that by using this, going through this process, starting with adaptive card JSON, by the end of it, I've got an image I can do just about anything I want with it. Now, circling back real quick on kind of the flexibility of having this as our foundation. This same adaptive card object, I could render HTML with it. I don't need to render an image. I could actually generate HTML markup, embed it, and then have that be served, and that's what shows up in a website. And that's exactly what Joe showed earlier in our admin UI, where you're authoring these adaptive cards, and we give you a preview of what it looks like. That's using that same technique, those same libraries. It's actually, I believe, using the JavaScript version of those libraries to do that. But at the end of the day, it's the same concept, same idea, same technique. So very, very flexible from that perspective. So yeah, that's basically what we're doing. That's a component of that whole screen sharing mechanism. And in a very similar way, but just different things, that's also how we just render the adaptive cards in Teams chat as well. So we're using these same libraries. We're using, things like Joe had mentioned, we templatize our adaptive cards and those kinds of things. That's happening here. It's actually happening before this, as we've already pre-filled out the templatized components. And so the final result that gets to this code is the final product that then gets rendered as an image. But these same adaptive card libraries allow you to manipulate all the controls within your card. Technically, you can dynamically add elements to your card. You don't necessarily have to feed it JSON, and that's all you can work with. So it's a very robust mechanism, and so lots of flexibility there, and allows for a lot of creative juices going forward, and see what else we can do with this stuff. That's what I got for this. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
So there's a question. The that async method that you call render card to image, he's asking, is that a service? What exactly is it?
So no, I believe it's built into the libraries themselves. It's not making any sort of network calls. It's probably more around the idea of being able to not necessarily lock up process resources. So doing it like this will allow you to, when you have the potential of doing thousands of these a second, it allows the operating system to optimize how resources are used as that card is being rendered. So it's not necessarily that entire thread, and that executable is only rendering one card at a time. It allows for the parallel processing that we need. There's a couple different ways if you're not used to the async calls, or if you're used to thinking of async calls as network calls. You could also think of this as a way to batch. So if you knew you needed to render 100 cards at once, you don't necessarily need to render them serially awaiting each one. You could render all of them all at once, and then those would generate what are called task objects. Instead of doing an await, I won't go into it, but basically this gives you the opportunity to run parallel or card rendering at a much higher parallelism if the need arose, right? Because there's a lot of different uses for generating images of adaptive cards. It doesn't have to be screen sharing in Teams. It could be a lot of things. That's how we use it. But the async nature of this allows you to run these in parallel if you needed to. And no, it's not making a network call, just to reiterate that. It's all internal, as far as I know.
Cool. Matt, it looks like some of those questions are a little bit more generic around adaptive cards and Teams, so I'll let you answer those.
Yeah, there's some questions on just Teams 1.3 update. That's not quite done, but we're super, super close, so stay tuned on that. On this real quick, I had another question if others aren't queued up. Have you had time to think about, I really like the potential of what you guys are doing here. We always, the bummer with the render to image concept, which is what the bot framework actually does as well for non-adaptive card channels. So if you write a bot on bot framework and want to make it available to Facebook Messenger or Telegram or something that can't natively render adaptive cards, they have a service that'll render those to images. They do what you're seeing here. They say supports interactivity to false, and that reduces the useful fidelity of cards potentially by quite a bit, depending on the scenario of the card. Buttons get dropped, inputs get dropped. So what I was thinking about as you were doing this demo is you since you actually have like a, you have a wake word where you can interact with it. Have you guys thought about how you could surface up the actions that the bot can take? Whereas a button is the UX way where I'm like, oh, okay, I can do this. I see a button on the screen. Since you're only able to render it in image, what are some metaphors you could do to help people kind of learn? Like you guys confirmed the date in the demo, confirmed the shipping date, but it's not immediately obvious to me, or at least in the demo, like what are the operations I could take? And normally, if you had UI, you would present those as buttons, and that's the user's hint that these are some of the actions you can do. I'm just curious if you thought about how can you expose some of those actions, the fact that you can't render a button, but what other hints could you potentially do to showcase some of those? Have you guys been able to think through any of that?
So yes, I gave that some thought when I was kind of building this out, and the easy, the crude way to do it, I guess we'll call it crude, and not the sexy way, would be, you add those commands, you add those options maybe below the card or something like that, or you use like the multi-column display in adaptive cards and just establish a set of commands on the right or something like that. Here's all the things you could say.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. I think a more elegant version of that is, I am giving some thought to that. I can't give a lot of details right now, but I do have some thoughts around that area. This is a pretty new mechanism concept of bots being involved in a call, being basically a participant on the same level as a human. Yeah. So they're just another participant of the call. They're not necessarily something separate. You see them in the attendance list down below. That little blue square there, that was the bot's webcam, basically, right? So the same concepts, all the same concepts apply. So being able to kind of take the next step, or being able to take this first step, and this doesn't even go live for a little while anyways, we've got a lot of thoughts around what you're just talking about now, Matt, and some other even going further than that we hope to be able to talk about soon once this starts to really get some traction and be live.
Cool. Yeah, it is exciting because you're definitely on the forefront of, we always were like, okay, adaptive cards, we want them to support this multimodal world where you can be interacting with the card on a screen, you can be interacting it with on a what we were calling headless at the time, which is what the voice, and you guys are kind of working on this kind of hybrid where you can interact with the bot via voice, but the sharing screen, I think it's you're definitely at the forefront of some of this kind of, it's like a small evolution towards like the just human computer interaction, and I will follow it closely as you guys run some experiments there.
Sounds good.
Cool.
There were a couple of just suggestions. So Hilton mentioned you've got a lot of real estate, which is cool. That's the nice thing about sharing this full screen. So yeah, there's you're not limited to the length of the meeting chat window, which does give you some cool real estate to play with. I don't know if this was a question for you guys or for Jen. So is there any size message limitation to be recognized well by MS Teams?
Yeah, well, messages in Teams, a chat message in Teams does have a size limit.
Yeah, those are limited to 25 kilobytes, I think.
Yeah, and I believe the card is part of that.
Yeah, if that's what you're referring to, Marcelo, then yeah, it's 25 kilobytes right now. There is something we are looking to remove. It's a lot of work with a lot of teams, but I know they are looking to remove that 25K restriction if that's what you were referring to.
And Hilton, your question around injecting text into the text stream, yes, you could do that. The bot can share its screen as well as post to the chat. So the bot could potentially share a screen and then say, select the options in chat that you wish to do or say them, something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of things that you can do. You can do them purposefully when you know that the bot is going to be called. I think what Matt was getting at is how can adaptive cards be adaptive in knowing if they're in a call or not in a call and prompt the user for those actions, when they're in a call, something like that.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so where can folks find you? Do you have how can people kind of engage if they want to learn more about this?
Sure. So if you want to learn more, go to atbot.io. That is the website, and you can try the free Teams AtBot from the Teams App Store, which allows you to build some skills in Power Automate and try it out for free. Then you can move up to the premium version. We give you a $25 credit to try that out. And that's also signed up from appbot.io. And then if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to hello@appbot.io. Lisa Ruff, who is our VP of Sales and Partnerships, is in chat giving us the links. So yeah, check it out.
Thanks so much, you guys. I love the partnership we've had. I think we're pushing some fun ground together, so it's cool. Hopefully we can keep supporting each other along this way. So thanks so much for jumping on. I just have a quick couple closing things, and then we can kind of wrap up. And if you guys want to help me kind of collaborate on a mini blog post, we can do that. But if people joined late, shoot me an email, matt.heidinger@microsoft.com. If you are interested in a partner onboarding meeting, very low friction. We're just looking for folks who are currently building cards with Teams, ideally Teams and Outlook. So we can talk about some functionality we're working on to make it easier to build cards for those experiences. So it'll be about an hour-long meeting on February. And if we get a lot of interest, we'll just do a separate one. But reach out to me if you'd be interested in that. And lots of resources. This slide, you see it all the time, adaptivecards.io. The roadmap still shows the stuff we're going to be working on throughout this quarter and the first half of this year. A bunch of other really great Microsoft 365 developer community calls are going on. So if you've got some extra time, join some of these as well. I think we did Q&A, so I will just kind of show this again. aka.ms/m365dev YouTube is where all of these videos go, and there is the adaptive card playlist if you'd like to see previous months. We do this every month, so the next one will be February 11th, second Thursday of the month at 9 a.m. And then I will just kind of see if there's any just general questions here at the end, since I wanted to get all that stuff, make sure we covered that too. So if anyone any general questions for either the AtBot friends or just in general adaptive card stuff. And I saw a couple, can we use the third-party fonts on the adaptive card without installing these fonts to client machines? That's a really interesting question on fonts. Shoot me an email. I'd like to understand the font stuff usage. We do have the ability in a recent update to customize font families. We added the ability to specify, say, monospace fonts and whatnot. But I don't really recall what level of support in the SDKs we have to customize third-party fonts. That said, if you do not own the client machine, as in you want to send a card to Teams or to Outlook, that is not possible. You can only use the fonts that those apps have provided. But if you're rendering cards, doing what the code that Mick showed by using our rendering SDKs, you have a lot more flexibility there. So I can explain that in more detail if indeed you are rendering cards yourselves. You could also file an issue on our GitHub, actually, github.com/Microsoft/adaptive cards. So hopefully that answered your question. And sharing the presentation in this chat. So I don't know that we share, Dana, we don't share the decks, do we? We just kind of upload the recording.
Yep. Generally, we don't share the deck.
Yeah, there's really nothing useful in the deck. And I guess these links are, but I think we have these links elsewhere as well.
And we put some of the links in the YouTube video description, as well as when we get to the blog summary, we can put any relevant links in there as well.
Yeah, and about the kind of fancier fonts and stuff, we have considered that. We have the potential to introduce more fonts. With the previous release 1.2, we added monospace. I know things like Bootstrap have, headers or like jumbotrons or things like that, where you can kind of opt into a much larger, kind of artsier font, artsy being the technical term. And yeah, we have the potential to add that. So things like that, suggestions like that, the best place for suggestions is going to be ak.ms/AC roadmap. And totally can add suggestions for either vote on things. That's where you're going to get our roadmap. I normally show it every month, but I have it in the last little bit. That's where you can see things that are upcoming, things that are planned. And you can kind of submit and tell us what is most interesting to you. Very low friction. You don't have to create an account. You just have to put in an email address and then describe, why you think this is, or really help us understand why this is valuable. And then tried the new take PNG to card. My first tried in any documentation on what sizing everything needs to be set. Take PNG to card. Is that the pick to card on the adaptive cards designer? Is that what you're referring to, Gregory? I don't actually know which one's your first name and what's your last name.
First name's Craig. Yeah, it's the new trial, the new thing where you can take a PNG or JPEG and turn it into
Cool. Thanks for checking that out. I actually saw Haritas on the call. I don't know if he's still on. He did email me, said there's an update. They fixed some things. That is on my list to do today. Haritas, do you know anything offhand on that? So just so everyone's aware, this is actually a really cool feature that we need to start advertising a little better. On adaptivecards.io, and if you go to the designer, you click new card, there is a create from image feature that we demoed, I think in November. And it's now available on Adaptive Cards, and they're rolling out fixes. That was built by our community company from Imaginea, who, like AtBot, has been great partners with Adaptive Cards. And yeah, you can create these images like in Illustrator or whatever and turn them into Adaptive Cards. It's still a work in progress, and they're sending me updates. So we'll get a rollout on the update. But yeah, Haritas, I didn't see if you're still on the call, if you know anything.
Yes. Hi, Matt. I'm available. I didn't get the question. Could you repeat?
Yeah, Craig, do you want to, if it's just like, it didn't work at all, let us know. If it didn't really render as you expected, the best way to submit that feedback is in GitHub. And if you can provide as much context as you can, like here was the Illustrator, here was the PNG I used, here what you were expecting. I think that's, Haritas, is that the best way to get that to you?
Yeah. Right now, GitHub issues the right way, since we didn't put any trackers or anything in the service. So nothing is there at the backend. So please create the GitHub issues with any sample that you tried out, so that we can reproduce and see what went wrong or something.
Okay. Yeah, it went in. It just didn't render like it was. Some things were really big and it didn't pull everything in. So it was kind of like it captured some of the things from the PNG, but not all the things.
Okay, I got that.
Yeah, and just to reiterate kind of what he said, so for privacy and all sorts of other reasons, we don't keep those images at all, which makes diagnostic tricky because we lose the source image. So what ends up gets created. So unless you file an issue, it is a bit of a black hole. I'm going to make a note here to add a new issue template on GitHub that is for pick-to-card stuff to hopefully make that easier on folks. And potentially just to read us, I know we talked about it before. I don't know if we want to explore ways to make a link within pick-to-card itself to file feedback, if we want to explore that, just to try and increase the amount of data we get to try and refine it over time.
Yeah, I think we were planning on the roadmap in future, but yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for trying that,
Thanks,
Craig.
Matt.
It's you're definitely an early adopter, and yeah, if you'd be able to file that issue, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll go over to my developer account and get it there, because where I test it out is with the company that is my client right now, and so I can't send you guys anything from the client, but I'll flip it over to my developer account and send you what I can there.
Okay, awesome. A couple of questions. So can we set the fill background color on input controls? Again, it depends on if you're rendering cards, then yes. Like if you are literally rendering the cards, if you're just sending cards to Teams or Outlook, we don't have the ability to customize the inputs. Again, in kind of the name of consistency, that Teams wants the cards to look consistent. There are things like container styles, so you can set the background on containers and things like that, but the inputs themselves, no. Falls into this, if that's a suggestion you'd like, and you can give us some more understanding about your scenario, that aka.ms/AC roadmap link is going to be the best way to kind of submit those ideas. We go through all that feedback and prioritize. And then is there a resource we can connect on questions on building out a custom version of the designer? You can talk to me, and I think David Close on the call. He's the main maintainer of the adaptive card designer, or he might not be on it anymore. Sure. Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, I think we're going to be the folks that'd be the best to talk to. Or again, on GitHub is also just an easy way if you want to have a discussion there, or how to hook into it. Yeah. Yeah, does that work for you, Tom? Yeah, just go ahead and we'll monitor the GitHub there. And the docs, the NPM docs do go into a lot of advanced functionality, so take a look there as well. But we'll do what we can to try and help you.
Cool, thank you so much.
Sure. And then so okay, Shalini had mentioned some of the GitHub issues. Yeah. Not to make a complete excuse, but Microsoft, one of the things I really enjoy about working here is they really encourage people to disconnect over the holiday season, and the place is a ghost town in the second couple weeks of December. So we are just kind of getting back in the swing of things. That probably accounts for some of the delays. But that said, we are working on establishing and maintaining and tracking our SLAs for issues and things. One PR you would find, a lot of Microsoft repos are going to start having a support.md file, similar to our privacy.md and our security.md. And this is going to describe the level of support you can expect from the various things, which I think is a great initiative to start adding. Ours will be coming in within the next week, describing the level of support for different things. And over time, we'll do a better job at kind of tracking our SLAs going from first response. And that is definitely top of mind. So we appreciate your patience and also just kind of raising the importance that is to you, or has to you. Okay, cool. We can talk about the designer stuff offline or in the GitHub issue, frankly, whatever you guys prefer. Or if you want to do it now, I'd be fine with that too. But I did want to just kind of close the call officially. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Happy 2 weeks into 2021. We'll see you in February in just a couple of weeks. Hopefully, you'll be able to join us. I do want to also, anyone who's still here, thanks again, AtBot, and previously our friends from NeoHelden. If people want to participate on these calls, drop me a mail on that too. If you have something adaptive cards you think would be interesting for the community, just reach out. I think we want to get a mix of talking about what the internal team is doing, but also giving people an opportunity to showcase some of their external contributions as well.
Cool. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, awesome.